Aliens travel 3,000 years from the future for our help, but will we understand their message in time? This movie is a race against time. A language expert must decipher the language of these visitors before humans react with violence.
Hello, welcome to our channel. Today we'll recap and review the mind-bending events of this classic 2016 sci-fi movie called Arrival. Let's check it out.
Dr. Louise introduces us to the film with a loving voice, over-dedicated to her daughter, discussing how memory is a strange thing, and we see her relationship with her child blossom from an infant to an adolescent, playful toddler and teen. This story ends in tragedy, though, as her daughter is suffering from a terminal illness and passes away. Next, Louise is at her university class. She's a lecturer and an expert on languages. At the beginning of her semester, students' phones begin to ring, and one of them asks her to turn on a news channel. There are reports coming in from around the world of alien spacecraft that have arrived in 8 cities. Sirens sound and class is dismissed, and Louise makes her way to her car and fighter jets zoom overhead. Louise returns home while rolling news recounts the story of these alien spacecrafts landing around the world. The following morning at the university, she arrives to find the building empty with no students at her classes. A state of emergency has been declared across the country. While in her office, Louise receives a visit from Colonel G.T. Weber, who has met Louise previously when she translated some Farsi in terrorist transmissions. He comes asking for her help. He takes out a dictaphone, places it on her desk, and presses play. The recording is of a human voice speaking to one of the aliens. Weber wants her to translate it so they can understand these visitors. Louise doesn't agree to come with Weber, instead goes to ask one of her rivals, though he isn't up to the task. That night, Weber returns in a helicopter and tells her to pack her bags. On their flight to the landing site, Louise meets theoretical physicist Ian, who quotes to her a passage from one of her old books on the importance of language in warfare, how it is the first weapon that either side will use. Weber says that Banks will be working with him when they are inside the shell, the name that they have given the spacecraft. The helicopter approaches the shell and we get our first impression of this eerie monolith. It hangs in the air perfectly smooth. It doesn't move and stays perfectly still as if it's weightless. Louise and Donnelly are taken to processing and asked a series of evaluation questions before they are allowed to access the shell. The soldier asks Louise if she's pregnant and she quickly dismisses it. We sense her sensitivity based on the montage from the start of the film. They are suited up in large hazmat suits, and the gravity of boarding the ship starts to dawn on Louise as they are driven to the landing site. Weber tells them that the door at the bottom of the shell opens up every 18 hours. This is how they'll gain access to the ship. The 3 of them are raised inside the ship on a crane. The gravity inside is different and is as though everything has shifted 90 degrees, allowing the crew to walk up as though it's the floor and not the wall. They begin their ascent to the top of the shell, all suitably freaked out by the alien gravity inside the ship.
Reaching the top of the ship, they come face to face with a clear wall, like glass. Behind it, a wall of smoke, within shapes gradually begin to form, followed by deep rhythmic rumbling.
We catch our first glimpse of the visitors. They are large octopus-like creatures, oversized heads, and a series of long limbs. They sound like a large trumpet noise, and we snap back to base. The team are back on the ground. Weber tells them that they have a few hours to strategize before they are sent back in. The news reports a series of chaotic events across the country. Humanity doesn't know how to handle the arrival of these creatures. Rioting and curfews are in place across the country. Louise understands she can never speak the aliens' language, so she brings a whiteboard with her when they return to the ship to see if they have some form of visual language. She writes human on it and tells them that's what she is and asks what they are. It doesn't seem to work and the aliens vanish into the smoke. One returns moments later and expels an inky substance from one of its tentacles. It's a strange circle symbol that is obviously an attempt at communication. It worked. The aliens sent another series of symbols, similar in shape but noticeably different, the start of a language. Back on the ground, Weber is frustrated with Louise's slow progress and how he has to report their progress to his superiors. Louise stresses to him that in order to understand them properly, the process will need to be slow. She breaks down to him the extremely complicated process involved in understanding the motivation of the visitors and ensuring they understand exactly why they are here. Though they are on the clock, the Chinese government are not so keen on using communication to solve the issue, and they are massing their naval forces. In their next communication session, Louise removes all of her protective gear. She says the aliens needs to be able to see her properly without all of her protective clothing on. She approaches the clear wall and raises her hand to the glass, and the alien seems to return the gesture, offering its spread out tentacles in return. They send out 2 gestures that they presume are their names, and Donnelly decides that they will call them Abbott and Costello. Back on the ground, Louise begins the painstaking work of assembling the many symbols they have given them. She reveals they have called these visitors heptapods, meaning 7 legs. Their ships are made from an unrecognizable material, and that they still don't know what they are there for. A montage plays out over their investigation process and discover that their written language is very different from their spoken language. It only represents meaning and not the sounds that they make when they speak. They discover that their language has no respect for time, and as such the heptapods have no straightforward concept of time as humans see it. Humanity is still in the grip of chaos. News reports show us that a photo of one of the aliens has gone viral, and rioting around the world intensifies.
A soldier watches a podcaster say that humans need to use aggressive force. He glances over to a colleague, and they share a moment of agreement. The challenge of using language to solve problems over violence is a key theme of this film.
Donnelly speaks to Louise about how, when you study a language enough, it affects how you see the world as you start to think in their language. The language appears to be affecting Louise. She admits her dreams are becoming more intense, and she's thinking of her daughter more and more. Louise translates a transmission from the Chinese military. They are mobilizing their military. She deciphers that they are using mahjong pieces to communicate with the aliens, and that if communication is only established using winning or losing a game, they might be creating an unfriendly relationship with them. They have to fast-track their mission. In their next session, one of the aliens uses a phrase which translates as "offer weapon." She defends this, saying that the aliens might not know the difference between weapon and tool, or that they may be offering us a weapon. Alarms begin to sound as China disconnects their connection to the USA. The Chinese have translated the message as "use weapon." They return to their session, not realizing that a group of angry soldiers have planted a bomb in the room. One of the aliens thumps the glass. They've never seen this behavior before. They know the bomb is there, and they're trying to tell them. Louise and Ian can't understand the message, and the clock is getting dangerously low. One of the heptapods strikes the glass, and the artificial gravity switches off, launching Ian and Louise down to the bottom of the ship, saving them from the bomb as it detonates. Louise awakens in the medical bay. Weber thinks the explosion was an attack from the aliens, and their orders are to prepare for a retaliation. The air begins to rumble as the shell rises higher into the air. The news reports that Chinese military leader General Shang has given the aliens a 24-hour time limit to leave their airspace before they attack them. In another dream, Louise's daughter is asking her for the definition of a word that involves a competition where both sides win. She can't help her with an answer, waking up to see that Ian has found a solution. The heptapod's final message meant that their site is one of 12, that they are part of a larger whole. Louise pleads that they need to re-establish communication with the other sites. Maybe the heptapod's mission is to force humanity to work together for once. Her superiors aren't willing to cooperate. Around the world, humans are preparing for war, and Louise is the only one who wants to keep communicating. The heptapods send a pod down from their ship, and Louise climbs inside. It transports her up to the shell, and she's inside the room with the heptapods. She finds herself face to face with Costello, who tells her that Abbott is dying. Somehow she can now understand Costello's language more clearly in this place, but she still needs to understand their purpose here.
Costello reveals that they've traveled back from the future because in 3,000 years' time, they'd need humanity's help, and they've come here to help them understand. Costello reveals to her that bioweapon, which they've been meaning language, allows us to understand time differently.
She realizes that the memories she's been having of her daughter aren't memories at all. As she's been learning the heptapod language, she's starting to sense the future. She hasn't had a daughter yet, and her memories are flashes of her future life with her unborn daughter, Hannah. Louise is sent back to the ground, and all the ships around the world are floating higher. They seem to be preparing to leave. Louise's memories intensify, only they aren't memories. She has flashes of herself teaching heptapod in a class at university, of a book she's yet to publish on the topic of understanding them. As the base is dismantled, Louise suddenly has a vision of herself at a gala event with images of the heptapod language on banners around the wall. Suddenly, she finds herself face to face with General Shang, who thanks her for changing his mind when she calls him on his private number. She says she doesn't know his private number, so he shows her. Now, back in the present, Louise knows what she has to do. She finds a phone and calls Shang. Soldiers lock onto her, trying to make a call and begin to search the base. Her memories reveal that she called Shang and told him his wife's dying words. So, as the phone rings, she speaks to him in Mandarin, telling him word for word what he has told her in the future. We see rolling news reports showing that China has stood down, and around the world, all the militaries are laying down their arms. The other heptapod crafts around the world begin to fade into the air and disappear as if they were never there. Louise is back at home now, and Hannah is a little baby. We see that her father is Ian, though we also see flashes of the present moments after the aliens disappear.
Time now seems to be irrelevant to Louise. Now that she understands the heptapod language, she can see her whole life before her, knowing everything that'll happen to her. She already knows the heartbreak of losing Ian and losing her daughter, but also the joy of loving them both, though none of these things have actually happened.
The film ends with their embrace as they both agreed to make a baby.
Arrival is a mind-bending film that totally toys with our perception of time. What starts out as a seemingly normal sci-fi alien arrival story eventually becomes a fascinating tale that blends past and future into one seamless event. It's also fantastic to see a film that uses the idea of talking with others and using words to solve our differences instead of violence. Where most invasion films, the only answer is war, Arrival tells us the importance of trying to understand each other before resorting to violence. Please subscribe to our channel to be notified when we upload. Also, don't forget to suggest movies that you want us to recap in the future in the comments down below.